All right, welcome to week 14. You are in the home stretch. 2 weeks to go and then the final paper. So this is really a good thing. And, I wish you luck as you finish up your classes. I'm sure, you might start to feel really stressed after the Thanksgiving holiday. And, this is going to be an intense couple weeks, but that's the way college is. Okay, so in terms of week 14, got a decent amount of reading this week. There's John Mazzoni's Catholic Franciscan Ethics, so it is not in the Ethics, the Basics book, but the Catholic Franciscan book. And you're going to read about Catholic Franciscan ethics. So in this course, we've dealt with a religious approach to ethics a number of times. We talked about the Westboro Baptist Church. Many people thought that was a distortion of religion. We also talked about Blaise Pascal, who essentially said, look, any person who is rational and self-interested and considers what is most beneficial to them will choose to be religious because of the possibility that after they die, you could be experiencing eternal bliss, and you could avoid eternal torment. And so the rational, self-interested person is one who recognizes that it is in their interest to at least be religious and put themselves in a position to gain eternal paradise if it exists. Then we talked about natural law. Natural law is really the official doctrine of the Catholic Church, the official ethical philosophy, so it's important to know, important to review. And essentially what natural law says is that the good person is one who is natural, who acts naturally. And so everything within nature has a purpose and a point, and that is certainly true of human beings as well. Our natural goals are to procreate, are to survive, so to persevere, to become more knowledgeable, to gain truth, and to be sociable. And that is what it is natural for a human being to do, and you're good when you do that and promote that, so on and so forth. We also talked about the biblical story of Jesus with Mary and the expensive oil, and related that to complete altruism. And what Jesus seems to say, essentially, is that, look, don't be a moral saint. In a certain sense, he seems to agree with Susan Wolf by saying, look, this impartial, total universal, impersonal moral duty is not always the way to go. In fact, at times it's okay to express your love and your gratitude for someone in your life. And so that's okay at times to be a little bit more focused on those that are closest to you and not simply do, what you're supposed to do for the masses or something like that. And now we're getting on to the Franciscan approach to Catholic ethics. And you've got a couple discussion boards that relate to that, and you'll be reading the chapter, but just a few things to highlight. The Franciscan approach is really very relevant to our central course question because Francis was very aware of how we become distant from others, about how we can put up barriers to others. He was very much about letting go of the ego and the self-absorption that prevents us from truly being available to and attentive to the needs of others. And so, he was very much, that was his whole poverty thing was about letting go of worldly desires, the need for power, the need for dominance, the need to have things, which then makes other people an enemy. And ultimately, even death. He would say, look, if you fear death because you want to survive, simply as long as you possibly can, then you're again going to become a little bit more self-absorbed. You'll try to, accumulate a whole bunch of money so that you can feel secure. And that may prevent you from following God's will. The story talks about the chapter talks about a number of the key episodes in Francis' life. The nativity scene, where you have Jesus, who is the epitome of non-self-absorption and not being tied to material things, being available to everyone. The leper, his whole idea that he couldn't approach the leper, he couldn't embrace the leper until he let go of his fear of death. And when he let that go, then he became truly available to others. And so, that whole idea of letting go of egotism is a whole, central part of the Franciscan virtue ethics, which Mazzoni talks about. It's tied to the notion of care ethics, where our relationships with others is really the defining element of what it means to be a good person. And so certainly Mazzoni will talk about that. He'll talk about this idea that relationship is pinnacle and critically important to Francis and to the Franciscan scholars that came after him, such as Bonaventure. So he'll emphasize this idea that God is a Trinity, and God is love, is relationship with himself. Okay, so there's that. The other readings relate to this idea of casual sex, and so there's a discussion board about that. It's an interesting topic. Most of the readings are very short. One is fairly long, and those articles are one night stands, 8 reasons to have them, so that is definitely pro-casual sex. No hooking up, no sex for some co-eds, young adults in a hookup culture, talking about different views about casual sex on the college campus. And finally, the longer article, Are You There, God? It's Me, Monica. And this is a critique of casual sex, but in a really interesting way. Essentially, what she's going to argue is that from a female perspective in particular, that what women in particular really want is sex that occurs when a romantic, loving relationship. Not necessarily that you're married, that you have to wait for that, but that there is some commitment by the guy. There is some sense of romance. That casual sex, no strings attached, just getting drunk in a bar and having sex that night is not really what women want, and not what some guys want. That the better sexual experience is associated with love, with intimacy, with trust, with commitment, with respect. And that when people in general, and when women in particular, don't demand that, they're letting themselves down. So again, interesting way to critique casual sex. In terms of the other to-dos this week, there's this video, the Week 13 recap. There's always, as always, there is the highlights of the discussion boards. You have to submit your normal discussion boards. There's the course evaluation. It should be emailed to you. There's also a link on the NU Learn homepage. Definitely fill it out. Take it seriously. It's certainly reviewed by the deans and the higher-ups. And as my first online course, I'd really like to know what you thought. What went well, what went poorly, or what could be improved. So I would love, love, love to get your written feedback. There's also some extra credit this week. So one is a quiz, which I've called Phraseology, which is kind of a fun exercise. I give you a phrase, and then you've got to associate it with one of the moral theories we've studied up to this point in the course. Your choice, which one you want to do. And it is it's extra credit because I'm only going to count the quiz if it helps your quiz average. So if you bomb it, if you do terribly, it just won't count, won't matter. But if it helps raise that quiz average, I'll count it. So, don't feel any fear or pressure or anything by taking it. And the other thing is there's a Penn Mutual event. So Penn Mutual is an insurance company, a financial company, and they're coming in to do something with the rugby team, but it's open to the public in general. And it talks about debt, how to manage debt, the importance of debt, good debt, bad debt. So really important to any college student. It's at 5 p.m. in the Mirenda Center on Thursday. Just give me a heads up by some point tomorrow to get a head count if you're going to go. And that would be worth 3 reflective journals. So that's how it can help you out. And that's it for this week. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.